Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 316 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined after a short hiatus by my co-host once again, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, feels like a while now since we've just done like a normal Wednesday show where I haven't been traveling, where it's just been the two of us. It's like we're back to like a nice, relaxed Tuesday. You've got the luscious locks going right now. A lot has happened since we've had one of these normal shows, but welcome back to normalcy. And how are you doing on this Wednesday evening?
I am doing well, and yeah, that is very correct. But yeah, that is you did mention my hair is growing out a little bit. I've decided that I'm not going to cut it until the Falcons win a Super Bowl. So
Okay.
okay, I'm kidding. I'm not committing
We're
to
gonna
that.
do a castaway situation.
I'm not committing to that at all. But yeah,
Yeah.
so something new for sure. But yeah, it is nice to get back to some normalcy. We are in February already. The season is over. The Philadelphia Eagles are the Super Bowl champions. So I know that we weren't going to mention that at all. So let me mention that right now. But yeah, it's the beauty of the NFL, right? Everything resets back to zero, and we all start from stage one now moving forward, including the Falcons.
That's right. And a little less than a month now that officially you can start signing free agents. So we're really ramping up. We'll have the combine here in a couple weeks. This is when things really start to get going after the Super Bowl. Of course, the rumor mill will start spinning up. We've already obviously heard the Myles Garrett rumors. I'm sure the Kirk Cousins rumors will start flying, among other, probably more interesting players to the rest of the NFL. But a lot to get to, a lot to cover. And what better place to start than the free agents that the Falcons have to deal with, which actually a pretty sizable list this year. It's not always a huge list. Last year in particular, small list for Atlanta. This year, a little bit bigger. Actually, some notable names on here, some players that Falcons will want to resign that other teams actually will want to sign for a change. Most of them no. Most of them are relatively minor, as are most of the free agents in the NFL. But definitely some critical ones here we're going to get to. Obviously, Drew Dalman, Matt Judon, Justin Simmons, Mike Hughes, a lot of guys on this list to consider. So we're going to get to all that tonight. Obviously, if you guys have questions, I know, Robert Kelly, you asked the difference between a free agent and a restricted free agent. Absolutely, I'll get to that for you here as well. And yeah, Corey, in terms of the cap number, we'll have to take. I haven't heard a firm answer on the state of the cap. Obviously, if the cap were to go down like 12.7 million like you're suggesting, then that would be catastrophic for the NFL. Like
That would be catastrophic for everyone, not just the
teams
Falcons.
would be in a full-on panic. I don't think that's the case. I don't know that it'll go up by as much as it went up last year, but
I think if it went down that much, the New Orleans Saints franchise may dissolve.
they may just collapse like a house of cards. But there will definitely be an official announcement on that. But so far, I haven't heard anything firm. I think it's expected to go up probably about the number that you're suggesting. Not as much as last year would be my guess. But we'll get to all that stuff. Before I forget, I want to bring you guys a word from our sponsor. Got to keep the lights on here at the Falcoholic Live. And, of course, we appreciate BetOnline for helping us do that. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. The Super Bowl may be over, but there's a lot more sports out there that BetOnline covers, including the NBA, including the MLB when that starts up. I know spring training is just getting started. Saw those clips of Ronald Acuna smashing some homers, which I know will get Braves fans blood pumping. Not that I know anything about baseball, but I did see that come across the timeline. So
big
yeah.
because Acuna's working his way back from the torn ACL. So
Yes.
he's not going to be ready for game one, but hopefully, I think the latest was hopefully he'll be ready by the start of May, which would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see him out there. It's nice to see him, still crushing the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to see, obviously. But no matter what you want to bet on, guys, whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline's your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything, including NBA, college basketball, to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline's got you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. When you sign up, make sure to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. And of course, got to shout out Underdog Fantasy. I did not crush Underdog Fantasy. Like, I didn't have time to get settled. Hopefully Underdog will be with us next year. I have a couple weeks to get it down. I hope you guys crushed it. For those of you that played using our promo code BIRDS, BIRDS, to get your free picks in, get your deposit match up to $1,000. You can still do that. The promo code still works. Unfortunately, no more NFL football for Underdog at this point, but not to worry. Just like BetOnline, Underdog's got every sport in the books available for you. They've got all the picks, all the stuff you can go for, and of course, they've got that unique approach with the simple pick'em style format. You can continue to do that over Underdog for the NBA, MLB, all that good stuff. And again, if you sign up there, make sure to use our promo code BIRDS. It's BIRDS, like Dirty Birds, to get access to that free pick and that up to $1,000 in bonus cash offer. Thanks again to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's episode. All right. Well, Adnan, do you want to touch on anything else? Did you want to talk about the Super Bowl at all, or should we just dive right into free agents? I know there was a there were two spicy mock drafts that came out with the Falcons taking a wide receiver. I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday, Tracer and I, but maybe we should start there. I don't know. What do you want to start with here?
Look, just regarding the Super Bowl, I think the Philadelphia Eagles have given us a very valuable lesson that I have been screaming from the rafters for years, that it doesn't matter how analytical, football gets. It doesn't matter how advanced the sport of football gets. At the end of the day, the sport just inherently will always be won in the trenches. And that if you can build up your defensive line and if you can build up your offensive line, then you'll always have a chance, and you'll have, the opportunity to possibly even completely overwhelm your opposition, which is what we saw the Eagles do, pretty much all season. Not counting that game against the Falcons week 2. How did Atlanta win that game? And we saw them do that throughout the entire playoffs and, during the Super Bowl as well. So I would love for the Atlanta Falcons to take that lesson of just the importance of really focusing on the trenches moving forward, which means not taking a wide receiver at pick 15. But, it's February, and that's the thing about mock drafts, especially this time of year. Nobody's ever going to really hold anyone accountable for like a mock draft in February. So, now is, I guess, the time to, get those click views up and to, talk about any wacky thing that could happen.
Yeah, and it's like, I also don't necessarily blame people for sending the Falcons another skill position player, because clearly Fontenot is obsessed with skill position players. The Falcons have taken 4 of them in a row despite incredible defensive needs. So it's like, I almost wonder if they're like, well, even if I don't think they should do this, maybe we have to consider this because the Falcons have continued to do this. So it's almost like I don't blame them, even though I personally, again, would say that it's not really something that's realistic. But
how can you argue against all the success that the Falcons have had over the past 4 years too?
Yeah,
doing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's even funnier because it's like other than Kyle Pitts, all the players they've taken with those picks have actually been really good and key contributors and all that, but they still haven't won a lot of football games. So maybe it's more about what they haven't done with the other picks that's hurting the team. Maybe the first round skill position guys aren't the biggest issue, but a lot of way to go, obviously, for this team, and the defense is in just critical need of help at this stage. So yes, 2 good points, 2 things. Well, that's your little teaser of other stuff, but otherwise pretty quiet week in the NFL, other than the Super Bowl happening, obviously. But real quick before we get into it, did want to touch on Robert Kelly's question about the difference between a free agent and a restricted free agent and RFA, which if you're looking at that list I posted, you'll see some Falcons listed as RFAs. So UFAs are basically free and clear free agents. You can go do whatever you want. And basically players that have contracts that void are UFAs for all intents and purposes. Like they become UFAs when the league year starts, which means they have no restrictions. They're subject to the compensatory formula, all that stuff. RFAs are slightly different in that they are restricted, meaning that the Falcons can choose to sort of exercise additional control over them that they can't with UFAs by basically placing a tender on them. And you guys have probably heard of this, like the first round tender, the second round tender, the original round tender, and so on. I think they're making some minor changes to that, but basically with those tenders, what you do is, I think they now call the like original round tender the right of first refusal tender, which means that you have an opportunity to match the contract. But basically, it's the same for all of them, right? The first round tender is you have the opportunity to match the contract, and if you don't, then the other team must send you a first round pick to sign that player. That one's very rarely used. The second round tender is cheaper, and it's the same thing. You have the right to match the contract, or the team sends you a second round pick. And then the right of first refusal is cheaper. That for 2025 is expected to be about $3.1 million. And that just basically gives you an opportunity to match any contract that another team offers that RFA, which does occasionally happen. But yeah, the other two, the first and second round tenders, you'll sometimes see the second round tender on guys, but you don't usually see the first. It doesn't usually come to that. Like very few teams are willing to send a second. And pay a big contract for any of these guys. And the reason guys become RFAs, for the record, is because they've been cut at some point. So, like, obviously everyone on a rookie contract is here for 4 years. But if you are cut and are a free agent before you've played in the NFL for 4 years, you are still considered a restricted free agent after, I believe, 2 years of experience. And then after 3 years of experience, it's up to, yeah, you guys can see why this is confusing for a lot of people. So I think it's up after 3 years of experience, you become an RFA, which you're subject to the tenders. But prior to 3 years of experience, you are an ERFA, which is exclusive rights free agents. And then, that
so
one
that
is
was
vet minimum.
Landman.
Yeah.
So that was Nate Landman last year.
Yeah, exactly.
He was an ERFA because it was 2 years, and this year he will be an RFA.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're an ERFA, the team has basically the opportunity to just give you a veteran minimum contract, and you can't say no. Yeah,
I think Newsel was the same situation. So now they're both RFAs.
Yeah, it's usually UDFAs that have been cut at some point become ERFAs. Like Micah Abernathy is one. Robert Burns, the fullback, is another this year. Basically, the team has an opportunity to just offer you a veteran minimum contract, and you can't say no, essentially. So, I mean, you can say no and not play, but that's your only other option. So that's the difference there. For those that are curious about that, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, there are a few RFAs on this list. I'm not sure there are any that the Falcons would consider like tendering. But we will talk about it. The one that could be the one that probably would have been in consideration more would have been Dee Alford, maybe Ryan Newsel. But yeah, probably not something the Falcons have to worry too much about. And then if you ever see a player on Over the Cap listed as an SFA, that's a street free agent, that means they've been cut. So not only are they available to sign immediately, they are also not subject to the compensatory formula because they've been cut. So any like UFA that you sign means that their contract expired. They are subject to that compensatory formula, whereas the SFAs are not. So that's another little wrinkle in there. Yes. All right. Well, let's get going on. Oh yeah, I see Corey asked a quick question here. Thank you, Corey, for the $5 donation. Appreciate you. Says, can you guys give me your analysis of the Eagles draft strategy versus the Falcons draft strategy?
The dogs. They get
I mean, it's kind of a more complicated. I mean, the simple answer is that the Eagles just draft better players, right? I like they draft players that I like, and the Falcons tend to draft guys that I wouldn't necessarily consider drafting at those spots. The Eagles are typically very value-minded. They typically take premium positions early in the draft, that sort of thing. The Eagles also collect a lot of picks through various means, which I like. and they're not overly aggressive in terms of trade ups. They typically just kind of sit back and wait, which is usually better too. But
One big thing with Howie Roseman also is that he takes guys who are sort of mainstream popular picks.
yeah,
Like you can say what you want about Mayock and McShay and all the mock drafts and all that stuff, all the what the media is talking about, but um, a lot of the time, like the guys that the Eagles get are guys who are normally, the sort of best available. And I think part of that is that the Eagles just sort of don't overthink it. Like they don't shoot themselves in the foot.
yeah,
Um, and they sort of allow other teams to make those mistakes to, galaxy brain some of those picks. And then you have Roseman taking advantage of it, not doing anything special, not doing anything, complex. He just takes the guys that fall into his lap. Last year, Cooper DeJean in the second round. A perfect example of it was a few years ago when I mean, you look at the Atlanta Falcons, you take Troy Anderson the second half. That was sort of a galaxy brain pick at linebacker, and the Eagles, wind up with Nakobe Dean a few picks later. Um, they they got both of their cornerbacks uh, this past year. So cornerback was their area of weakness in 2023, and they wound up getting two cornerbacks with their first two picks. So obviously they hit positions of need, and I don't think it's anything complex. I don't think it's anything, they're not reinventing the wheel here. They're just sort of taking the guys that other general managers, galaxy brain themselves out of.
yeah. It seems like that's the case, and I do think that they're just willing, they just draft better. Like, don't I just don't know what to tell you. Like, they draft guys that contribute. The Falcons tend to have been missing on a lot of picks, and they've been trading up too. Which again, it is what it is. I think like the Rook pick is a great example of like you don't need to trade up for that. You should probably just be patient and see what falls to you and not give up premium picks. But um, you know, you can do it a lot of different ways, but ultimately the players you draft have to be good, right? You can't just not draft good players. So, and it's not like the Eagles are completely, perfect in everything they do. Obviously they have their players that don't work out too. But typically they just draft well, especially in the early rounds. They've been getting big contributors in a lot of areas, and they've been doing it consistently. So that's why they continue to be good over and over again. So, all right, let's start digging into this free agent list a bit here. I think the number one guy, and a lot of people seem to miss this. Like, I saw like an article about teams with the most difficult off seasons. And the Falcons were listed as number 2. This was on NFL.com. And I actually agree with that. I think the Falcons do have a very difficult offseason ahead of them. But funnily enough, it listed like Judon and Simmons as like key defensive stars at the Falcons, and Dee Alford, like key defensive stars that the Falcons had to resign, like have to resign like these guys. And like the Falcons are going to have a hard time re-signing all these guys. And I'm like, they're just not going to re-sign any of them. And it didn't mention Dalman at all, which is funny because Dalman's definitely the biggest free agent they have. And those other guys, I don't think the Falcons are. I mean, they're not going to make an offer to Judon. Judon wants out. I don't imagine they're going to make an offer to Simmons either. I imagine Simmons also wants out, but I don't think either and Dee Alford. I mean, I'm not sure that they're really going to make any sort of concerted effort to re-sign him if he thinks he can get a bigger contract elsewhere. Again, wouldn't mind having him around still. I think he can still play, but the whole defense played poorly last year. So I'm willing to give some guys another chance, but let's start with Drew Dalman, because Drew Dalman's the biggest free agent, and we touched on it before, but I think he's the most critical guy that they would have to re-sign. I think he's the number one priority, the one they need to make sure they get done before free agency kicks off. But I'm curious what you think about that, because he seems kind of like a polarizing player among the fan base, which, I mean, I guess I get to some extent, but also like look around the NFL and tell me how many centers teams feel great about. I mean, it's a position that everybody, like a lot of teams, are chasing right now.
Uh, yeah, I don't get the polarization with Drew Dalman. I mean, it's not like I would sort of understand it more when it was Caleb McGarry because obviously you spent a first round pick on McGarry. You traded up from the second round and then he got off to that slow start and we know the story behind him. But Drew Dalman, he was a fifth rounder who has, in my opinion, far exceeded expectations. I actually think that is Fontenot's best pick that he's ever made when you look at a value perspective. I mean, sure, he got Bijan and he got London. Those guys were top 10. Dahlman was a fifth rounder. So if you just take everything into consideration, Dahlman is arguably, and I mean the metrics PFF says this, he's the best run blocking center in the NFL, and has been for the last 2 years. His pass protection has gotten better. I get it. It's uh, we don't normally tend to like guys who are better run blockers and pass protectors, but I mean, he was a key contributor to, creating a lot of those rushing lanes, which resulted in Bijan Robinson having that breakout. And look, I get it. Ryan Newsel looked really good. He definitely held his own when Dahlman was hurt, but it's not like a one or the other type thing here. Newsel's a restricted free agent. He's not going to be super expensive to bring back. And I do think that it would be a mistake to just let Drew Dalman walk out of the door for nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
you get a comp pick, but you're not really going to reap the benefits of that for a few years, if at all, depending on who you decide to sign as well.
yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of compelling reasons to re-sign Dahlman, and obviously he did miss some time this year, but overall been pretty healthy. Really good run blocking center, and I think that's going to be a core part of the Falcons' identity going forward is leaning on that run game to help support Penix and keep the pressure off there. I think that Drew Dahlman's pass protection is fine. It's not great, but maybe that's something that can slowly improve over time too. Um, but he's an elite run blocking center and overall a very good center. So you don't really let those guys walk out the door. Nico, technically he was a fourth rounder, but yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but pick 114 I think was what it was. So a late, like an early day 3 pick essentially. So I agree with Adnan that he is a probably the best value pick that Fontenot has had thus far. But I think like given the context, which is the two biggest centers in the draft went back to school, and the number one center prospect is probably Gray Zabel, who is a Senior Bowl guy who played tackle at North Dakota State that's going to be transitioning to the interior. And some people are putting him in the first round because there are no other centers. Like that's it. So that like there's nobody that really that's being talked about that highly. So there's not really an option in the draft. And even if there was, this team really can't. I mean, you taking a center at 15? I don't think so. And free agency, I mean, there's not many options either, right? There's just center is kind of a wasteland right now. People are going to be fighting tooth and nail for anyone that does hit the market. Ryan Kelly of the Colts is probably the top name right now. And he's, 32. Other than that, I mean, I don't really see a lot of super intriguing names here. Bradley Bozeman's probably going back to Los Angeles. Coleman Shelton didn't exactly light the world on fire for the Bears. Josh Myers of the Packers is probably going to get a big deal. And he's probably going back to Green Bay. So there's just not much here. I think you just can't really like risk him leaving. So you kind of got to give him, a probably close to top of the market, deal. I don't think he's going to get like Creed Humphrey, like elite center money, but he's probably going to be getting like 12 to 13. That would be my guess. And I think that's just what you have to pay for Drew Dalman. And I don't think he's going to even sniff free agency. I think that's the one deal I expect to get done before free agency, more than likely. I don't know if any of these other ones that we're going to talk about will, but I think he's going to come in like between 12 to 14 million. But what do you think about that type of contract for Dalman?
I mean, yeah, I think that's the market value. I was thinking 13. So I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
12 to 14 is the right in line with that. Um, I mean, yeah, that it sounds like a premium, but this team really isn't in position to just let guys who are genuine contributors just walk out the door. I mean, I would do it like paying him around what Caleb McGarry got in his free agency, and I get it. McGarry plays the more premium position. Tackle is more premium than center, but it kind of feels like these days every single position on the offensive line has just become a premium position. That's why it kind of feels like that the players got a major victory with the franchise tag. Like we're not even mentioning the tag because the tag is now, every offensive lineman combined. It's no longer, all right, a center will make this much, a guard will make this much. I think the tag will probably be what, $24 million.
Yeah, yeah, it's not an option. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, the Falcons aren't tagging Dalman, but yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. $13 million a year on average. I definitely think that Drew Dalman can sort of play his way into that sort of contract or into being worth that contract. He's going to be 27 this year, so you would get him throughout the remainder of his prime if you sign him to a 3 to 4 year deal. Obviously, not all of it's going to be guaranteed, but I think if you give him 3 to 4 years, and then the first 2 years are guaranteed, more so, then you're sort of mitigating that risk in case of a fall off. And then if he really doesn't, if he regresses or if he doesn't do what you're expecting him to do, you still have Ryan Nuzul, on the roster, and you can see what you can sort of pivot over to Ryan Nuzul next off season when he's in line for his new contract as well. So I just don't think it would be a wise move to just let Dahlman walk away.
No, and I don't think they'll consider it. I think he'll be the guy that they prioritize getting done. So, uh, we'll see how quickly that materializes and what the number is. But, yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, trying to go down the list. Matt Judon, he's a guy that obviously had a big like dollar amount next to his name, so he's kind of at the top of the list for a lot of people. I don't think the Falcons will even. I think Judon's out of the building and is not coming back. Basically, is my take on that. I don't think he's even in consideration to return. So I imagine you kind of feel the same way about that. Yeah.
I was eating an apple.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, no, Judon can go.
Yeah.
I've seen more than enough from Matt Judon. I know he had like a decent 1 to 2 game run there after the bye week, but yeah, I don't think the Falcons are going to really suffer at all with Matt Judon walking out of the building. That's a third round sunk cost that you just need to sort of live with and not compound by giving him. I mean, yeah.
That one's pretty
Thank God
simple.
they didn't.
Yeah.
Thank God they didn't give him that extension when they traded for him. But I don't think, looking at it now, I probably don't think that they were even considering giving him that extension like in the first place.
Yeah, it seems like they were not. So, uh, thankfully they didn't. Yeah. Justin Simmons, probably the next guy on the list. Simmons played fine, nowhere near the impact player I think a lot of people wanted. I don't think he's going to be getting the type of money the Falcons gave him anymore, given what he put on tape. I think he's just sort of an average starter now. You could do a lot worse than Justin Simmons. So, I mean, if he was willing to take a pay cut, down more like 5 million or something to be kind of like an average starter, like mid-range free agent, I think that would be okay. But I think you're trying to upgrade that position if you can. So I'm not really. I think you probably just see if like let him test the market more than anything, and if he doesn't get any super compelling offers, then maybe you bring him back to kind of compete there and be your nominal starter. But what do you think about Justin Simmons?
Yeah, look, my take with Simmons is it's the same as yours. It depends on the dollar amount. If he's looking for 8 million a year, then good luck. There's the door. Get it from someone if you can. But with Simmons, I think there could be some value in bringing him back, given that you cannot fill in every single hole in the draft, especially this year, given the limitation with the picks you have. So obviously, it'll be a catastrophe if this team has to start Richie Grant again, or if Richie Grant is the day one starter. Obviously, you want someone better than Simmons as well, but if you go into next season with Justin Simmons on day one, I don't think that would be a catastrophe. I don't think that would be, a sign to panic. He's an average starter at the strong safety position. That's fine. That's decent. The value there would be that you don't have to spend a draft pick on a safety, or you don't have to spend any bigger free agent dollars on a safety. So if you want to re-sign Simmons, and if you want to spend that draft pick, you know, day one draft pick, day two draft pick on a pass rusher and a linebacker, I think that could be a pretty wise move. And then you have, safety filled in at least for this year. And then you can sort of punt the safety need to, the 2026 draft.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's someone they're not going to prioritize. They'll sort of let it fall, and if he wants to come back and the dollar amount's right, then sure. But I think they're looking to kind of shake up that room outside of Jesse Bates. You're hoping DeMarco Helms is healthy. I know they were hoping to have him as a part of a three safety set. So, maybe they're comfortable with Helms being the starter next to Bates if nothing else. But
I feel like that's a big risk too.
that's a
Like,
huge risk. Yeah, I don't think that's the right. I don't think that's the right plan. But
because I mean, no disrespect to Helms, we know that his coverage ability isn't really uh, what has him in the NFL right now. Like, I'm not saying that he can't get better, that he can't improve at it, but I feel like we would all be a lot more comfortable with Helms being, a backup type player, as opposed to being your day one starter. And if he fails to live up to expectations, then it's like, okay, this is just a huge hole now.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. So I think that one they're gonna kind of let it play out. Not a huge rush to re-sign him. Um, Mike Hughes, I think, is another one they could try to get done before free agency. If they, I think Mike Hughes was a perfectly solid outside corner too, across from Terrell. They're probably not going to have the resources to target everything in the draft. So I think if you think you can get by with Hughes again, which I think you probably can, like I think he was fine. He wasn't the problem in the secondary. I think you see if you can get him back for like 5 mil or something like that a year. And see if you can kind of paper over that need, give him like a 2-year deal or something. See if you can keep him around for a couple more years there. He's only 28, so you could even, if you like him and then you're confident, you could give him like a, longer term deal and hope that he can solidify that spot for you, give him a little bit more money. I don't think that's a critical one, but I do think that's one that they will try to get done. Because I think the secondary coaching staff in particular is pretty much the same. And I think it seems like they really like him. So,
Yeah, I really like Mike Hughes too. I mean, going into last season, I know that he was a player that a lot of people that was very polarizing. But I think the reason for that is because they tried to sort of fit a square peg in or fit a square shape into a round peg. Um, by trying to play him on the inside, and obviously his best position is on the outside. We saw that last year. I don't think that Mike Hughes is someone who's really a huge problem. He wasn't a huge culprit with the defense last season, and I think I would really like to see Mike Hughes back.
yeah, I think that would just be a simple not overly expensive signing to solidify one of your to prevent basically something from becoming a hole when you already don't have a lot of resources to play with. I think you could do a 2 or 3 year deal and push that money out a little bit. It wouldn't be a ton to begin with, so hopefully that's a way you can kind of solidify that corner two spot without too much trouble. Um, yeah, going down the list, Dee Alford probably the next biggest name to consider. Um, you know, Dee Alford was a guy I really liked. And I think last year played a lot better in that more man coverage focused scheme. But this year, almost entirely zone. They let Terrell play a little bit of man later in the year, but Alford just couldn't cut it. Teams picked on him, and the tackling kind of didn't work out super well either. It was just a tough look. So obviously, seems like the Falcons are probably going to be upgrading there. I don't think they're going to tender him. I don't think they would be opposed to bringing him back, just as a depth option. I mean, he's certainly not a bad depth corner. It's just I don't know that you can start him in the slot in this scheme. I suspect Alford's probably going to want to go elsewhere to more of a man coverage focused scheme, though. So he's probably going to be someone that they don't rush to re-sign, but would be okay with bringing back. But I don't know. I kind of think he's probably on the way out.
I'm good on Alford. I'm I'm good. I'm good on Alford. I'm fine with Alford not being on this team anymore. And I know it wasn't his fault. Sometimes as some of those games, but it's he's not a guy that will where it'll upset me at all. Where the Falcons lost Dee Alford, and it's like, okay, if I get that report that Alford is signing with someone else, it's gonna be like, all right, you know,
Good
that's
luck,
fine.
good luck, and yeah, all the best. But yeah, I don't think he's someone that I think he's probably disappointed. This was a kind of a year where he could have, I think, played himself into like a contract, and just didn't really do it. So
Kind of
it's
feels like he's
unfortunate.
regressed from the first year from a couple of
Yeah,
years ago, and yeah, that's not great going into the last year of your contract where you'll have a chance to be a free agent. But yeah, I'm I'm good.
yeah,
I'm good on Holford for sure.
yeah. Um, Going down the list, Ryan Newsel. I don't think they're gonna let Newsel walk. He's an RFA. I don't think they're gonna bother like tendering him. I don't know that that'll be necessary. I think they'll give him a pay bump. But he played about 50% of the snaps. Certainly looked like he could be a starting caliber center, not necessarily a high end one, but like a passable one, like an average starter perhaps. So maybe he does get offers from other teams, and maybe they do want to hold on to him. But I don't know that they can really afford to put even like a right of first refusal tender on him. Kind of, their cap space is kind of sketchy as it is, but I do think he's someone they would like to bring back if possible.
Yeah, I'd like to bring him back too, and I think the RFA, him being an RFA does give the Falcons an inside track. I think the team does like him, and I know we talked about Dalman, but I would like to have them both, on the team. Again, just as sort of that insurance for Dalman, not just regarding injury insurance, but also if Dalman does not, play great or play up to the contract, then you can sort of pivot over to Newsel very easily. He's someone that will have already been in the system, that, will already have some chemistry with Bergeron and Lindstrom. And, I that's one where I will be disappointed if we did lose Ryan Newsel.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So I think they'd like to bring him back, but they're not gonna break the bank for it. But I'm curious to see if he does actually get a tender, given that he seems to be on the upswing. And I think they would hate to, develop that kind of homegrown offensive line talent and let him get out the door. I think they would probably like to hold on to him if they can. Nate Landman, I think, is an interesting one because I feel like his reputation throughout the NFL means that like teams are going to be interested. But he also just didn't look healthy like all year. Really struggled to move. Still a good run defending linebacker, but the athleticism was just such an issue. Like I can't really justify a 3.1 million like tender on him. And I think that means somebody else is probably going to sign him. But I think the Falcons would be happy to have him back as a depth linebacker, but I feel like someone else is probably going to pay him at least some amount of money. So
Yeah, no, I'd be more than happy with that, but yeah, Landman's not someone you ever really want to rely on being a starter ever again after this past season, because it's so hard for a linebacker to not be good at coverage and to not be able to move laterally, that well, and to be kind of unathletic. I definitely think they missed him at some points. We saw it especially early in the season when he went on IR, and the team was getting gashed in the run game. That I like Landman as a depth piece, but yeah, I feel like linebacker is going to need to be a priority position.
yeah, I think it will be. I think it's somewhere they're going to try to upgrade either through an outside signing or through a draft pick. Probably a draft pick because again they don't really have money there, and they're probably just going to have to pray that Troy Anderson can stay healthy too. So dicey, but yeah, I think that
Yeah,
Nate
I mean,
Landman,
like,
yeah,
Caden Ellis is, he's great. We know Caden Ellis had a breakout season last year. What's his name? JD Bertrand. Team drafted JD Bertrand last year, which is, we all have some nice hope for JD Bertrand. Landman and Anderson, like Troy Anderson, I'm sorry, like I feel like at this point with Anderson, it's a fool me once situation because you get your hopes up with Troy Anderson, and then he either can't seem to figure it out, or when he does start to figure it out, he can't stay healthy. And then even when he came back from the injury, he didn't look very good. And I I don't like the idea of this being the quartet of linebackers going into next season. And now that I'm sort of talking about it, it sort of may end up being Landman being the odd man out, just because Anderson is under contract and he does sort of have that greater potential due to his athleticism and better coverage ability. But yeah, I can easily see Landman walking and the team sort of drafting a linebacker in the second round, and then trying to move into next season with that fresh blood in the second level of the defense.
yeah, I think so too. All right, Lorenzo Carter, he gone.
No, you don't want to have a monologue or Lorenzo
I don't
Carter.
think I need to bloviate about Lorenzo Carter. I've never seen a player play 36% of the snaps and do nothing, but that's what Lorenzo Carter did. Uh,
It
Honestly,
wasn't
impressive how
yeah.
little impact was
He,
made.
he was doing a lot of cardio, like
Yeah,
he was doing a
he
lot of cardio.
looks like an edge rusher, but man, doesn't really play like one, unfortunately. Which is it doesn't look like the player he used to be. So I don't know, you know, what happened there, but completely ineffective.
Looks
Yeah.
like Tarzan, plays like Jane.
Yeah, he's a perfect 10 RAS. Unfortunately, he's a 0 on the field for this Falcons team. Um, Eddie Goldman, I would be fine. Like if Eddie Goldman wants to come back for relatively like what he close to what he made this year, maybe a slight bump. Um, I'm fine with it. Like he's actually a good pass rushing nose tackle. Didn't really defend the run super well, but he was one of the team's like most productive like on a per snap basis pass rushers.
He
I
was.
mean, I have no problem bringing him back to be a rotational piece on the interior, especially since we're probably losing at least on Yamada, if not more guys there. So, I'm fine with Eddie Goldman coming back on a cheap deal. I
Look,
like Eddie Goldman. So
I'm a little biased. I'm rooting for Eddie Goldman. Like
yeah,
I've been rooting for Eddie Goldman, since talking to him at training camp last year. It was at the high school, and he, just sort of talked about how he was called back, and or sorry, how much the game means to him, and it was just one of those things where you can sort of just tell that yeah, he went into retirement, but he something was missing a little bit. The game of football was missing a little bit. He came back, and I'm really happy that he did sort of show out. He did make the 53. And not only that, he was productive. Like, like you said, he was a really good player. Now the questions are, he did retire twice in the last 3 years. Does he still, have that love of the game, or that desire to continue, because the NFL season is a hell of a grind. Um, but if he does, I think he's a very good veteran voice in the locker room. I think he's someone who's respected in the locker room, and I'd be more than happy. Like, give him $1.5 million next year, not really breaking the bank, and you're getting a productive interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And, kind of continuing on the trenches here, Liam McCullough, the long snapper, I think he'll probably be back. I mean, I can't imagine they would, he's a long snapper. I don't think there's going to be like a bidding war or anything, but Liam McCullough, like, the best thing you can do as a long snapper is not be notable. And I think that's exactly what we've got in Liam McCullough. And he's got a great name too, the Highlander. So,
Yeah, and Liam, the last long snapper, came onto the show, Josh Harris, and now he owns the Washington Commanders.
there
So,
you go. Yeah.
you
See,
know,
we got to get Liam on, and then his career could take off too. So,
yeah, exactly. Liam, if you want to be a billionaire, then
yeah.
join the show. That's
Unfortunately, the magic doesn't work for us, but it could work for you. Yeah.
we're kingmakers for other people.
Yeah, we're
but
the kingmakers. Yeah, we don't become kings though. Yeah, we're just behind the scenes. Yeah.
Very facetious joke. That's not the same Josh Harris. The Josh Harris that owns the Commanders isn't the same Josh Harris that is the long snapper for the Chargers. But yeah, long snapper. We never mentioned Liam McCullough's name once last year, which is exactly
what you want. Yep, exactly. So good for him. Good for him. Big shoes to fill after Josh Harris departed, but he managed to do it. So good for him. We got James Smith-Williams next on the list here. I'd be fine with him coming back. I thought he was, again, you're talking about like basically vet min type guy, good run defender. I felt like he got a tackle for loss, and that was kind of it. But he'd get that tackle for loss, and like that's better than like most depth guys do. He comes in, he gets a tackle for loss, that's it. But hey, so they may not be able to solve all their problems, in the draft, or they may miss on guys or whatever. So I think you could do a lot worse than having James Smith-Williams in your edge rotation, assuming he's healthy. So
yeah, he's fine. Like, I'll still never forget. It was day one of of training camp, and I looked up at the defensive lineup, and I was like, is that James Smith-Williams lining up at the edge? I should have known right there it was going to be a long season.
Starting edge rusher, James Smith-Williams.
Deep down, I did know that it was going to be a long season right there, but you still need a safe face. You need to keep the hope. But yeah, it's for the money. If he wants to come back, 1.2 mil. Yeah, sure.
Okay, sure.
You're not breaking the bank on him, but yeah, I would much prefer him to not be the starter on day one.
Yeah, like if we could get to the point where James Smith-Williams was inactive because we had better options, but he was he was available to activate if we needed. That's probably ideal, and I wouldn't mind him being like the fourth edge rusher or something like that too, or the fifth edge rusher, but yeah, probably he's a guy that you want to upgrade, but if you had to play him, you're not too upset. I think the edge rush rotation definitely took a hit after he went down too, which I think says that he was playing like meaningful snaps for this team. Another defensive lineman here, and Kentavious Street is next. Kind of take it or leave it with Street, honestly.
I'm leaning leave it just because of what the Falcons did regarding, Brandon Dorlus. You would much rather see Dorlus come into his own and become like a true and genuine contributor this year, and kind of feels like Street is a bit redundant when it comes to the position, and redundant when it comes to he's sort of, I don't want to say blocking Dorlus, because if Dorlus can't beat out Kentavious Street, then we have bigger problems. But yeah, I'm okay with Kentavious Street. Like, there was nice trade deadline move in 2023.
Yeah.
He had that nice run after the deadline that year, and then last year it was okay.
Well, it was
But
perfect because he came in, played well, then got hurt, so he actually missed the snap percentage that he needed to cost the Falcons a pick. So that he didn't actually end up costing them a pick. And then obviously they brought him back this year, and it all and
there
he
you
was
go,
a
big
depth guy.
win.
So big win,
Big
savvy
win for the
move there.
Falcons right there. The
Yeah,
Falcons, don't need to be losing any more picks.
yeah, even seventh rounders. Yeah, we got to hold on to those. So,
Well,
uh,
yeah, we need to hold on to whatever we can get.
yeah, we got Kadero Hodge next. I think he's another one. I think they will re-sign before free agency. He's one of the guys I feel most confident in coming back. They'll give him a pay bump. He's an all pro. He's an all pro. All pro special teamer Kadero Hodge. So
Another guy that I'm really rooting for. Like,
yeah,
that was one of the most wholesome interviews I've ever done with him in the locker room. It was right after the Bucks win where he had that long, walk-off touchdown. And yeah, it was, man, what a night that was. Everything was ahead of us that night. We were like, man, the Falcons, man, this is going to be the year where it's going to be something magical. It's going to be magic. It wasn't. But yeah, Daryl Hodge, like, you can tell just how much that moment meant to him. And yeah, I still remember the quote of him saying, like, me, like, I did this, like the play was drawn up for me, like, I scored. It was just one of those where it's like, he's a good guy, and you're really happy that, it happened for someone that wasn't really expecting it, that wasn't really supposed to be in that position, given that he was an undrafted free agent like all those years ago.
yeah,
And yeah, outside of that, he was a good special teamer. He scored against the Saints on that muff punt. He had some tackles. I think he's been the Falcons' leader in special teams tackles every year. So yeah, I feel like that's a no-brainer. Daryl Hodge, and I mean, he can sort of do. He can fill in when he's asked to be a wide receiver as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah. He's a very solid like depth receiver too. Like I think he's a no-brainer. You bring him back, solidify your special teams and other rotation. We'll just touch on a couple of the notable guys the rest of the way. Richie Grant, he gone.
Look, man, I called that last year.
Yeah, you did.
I was talking last offseason. When people were talking about, oh, maybe this will be the year with Richie. No, it won't. It will never be the year for Richie Grant. I get it. He was a second rounder. Accept the sunk cost. He is not a good football player. I'm sorry. That sounds mean to say, but I mean, I've had enough. Like, I've had enough of watching Richie Grant for the Falcons in my team secondary. Like, hopefully he finds a job somewhere else, and he can get burned in another team secondary.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's too much to say there. I think the Falcons are very upset with Richie Grant, to say the least. I think they thought they had a hit, and instead it was not a hit. And one of the biggest misses of the entire Fontenot tenure, I would say. So, considering who they passed on to draft Richie Grant, Creed Humphrey,
yeah, and not just him, but Javon Holland too.
Yeah,
Javon Holland at the same position.
Yeah. That was like they would have had to not trade down to get Javon Holland. So I guess that one I feel like slightly better about, but Creed Humphrey was still there, so I'll never forgive them for that. That one I'll never forgive them for. But yeah. We got Storm Norton. I think they will bring back
Storm. Bring back Storm.
I think they'll give him a pay bump too. The offensive line injuries can derail your season. That's why I think they're going to prioritize Newsel and Storm, and just bring those guys back and make sure that everyone is in place here, just in case anything does happen.
Look, I'm fine with the offensive line. Obviously, it's not great imagining Caleb McGarry being the full-time blindside blocker now for Penix, but McGarry's gotten better and better at pass protection with each passing year. So, it's fine. Like, it's okay. I feel like Jake Matthews, now that he will not have to cover the blind side, I feel like Matthews is going to be it will sort of help his career longevity a little bit. Um, Even though like Matthews is, insanely reliable, he's been a metronome. Falcons' offensive line was very good again last year. Like this offensive line, it's not a fluke. This O line has been genuinely borderline elite, if not some years, absolutely elite over the past 3 years. And then, like you said, the depth of it as well. I feel very comfortable with Storm Norton being the swing tackle. I think he's one of the better swing tackles in the NFL. When he was called into action, he was more so called into action a couple of years ago. He looked really good. Ryan Newsel, we saw it this year. He looked really good. Other than a couple of snap infractions here and there, it didn't really cost the team, even though it could have against the Saints in that first game. But Newsel is, I want to say, one of the high-level backup centers in the NFL. Backup guard, well, we can talk about, but I mean, Newsel can fill in as a swing guard as well. Like
Yeah.
center is his like exclusive position. But yeah,
Yeah.
um, I like just about everything about the Falcons' offensive line.
Yeah, I would not touch that. Like, you got a good thing going, just leave that alone.
You lucked into like an offensive line just being,
Yeah. Yeah,
really high level. Like, let's
look,
be honest, it's
Arthur Smith, we can give him props. He assembled a good offensive line and good offensive line depth and a good offensive line coaching staff. Like that Arthur Smith nailed that.
he nailed that.
Unfortunately
And
didn't.
also, it even goes back to Dimitrov. Like,
Yeah.
you already had a left tackle in place. You already had Lindstrom in place as a franchise guard, arguably the best guard in football now.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't really too much that needed to be done to solidify it. And that's, yeah, like, let's keep riding this horse as long as we can with this offensive line, and then sort of make the adjustments as need be in the years to come. But right now, I feel like the offensive line shouldn't really be touched too much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't mess with a good thing. Don't mess with a good thing and leave that group intact. Couple more we'll pick here. Taquan Graham. I think a guy that's just also unfortunately kind of been injury bugged. I wouldn't hate him coming back. He's not going to be expensive. Just to compete. Like, I would bring him back to compete in camp. I don't know that he'll have a guaranteed roster spot or anything, but I think when TQ has played, he's been good. Like, he's been solid to good, I think. But like, just the consistency has been tough for him. But again, he's still young. He's 27. Still a lot of football ahead. I would be fine with him coming back to compete in camp, but not a guy that you're going out of your way to re-sign necessarily.
Yeah, like a non-guaranteed type, deal for a camp, and yeah, that's fine. Like, I'd be okay with that too. I mean, I feel like it's a shame because last year it kind of felt like he was really about to start coming into his own a little bit. He was really gonna like get that opportunity, and then yeah, it's if you can't stay healthy, you can't stay healthy. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe he can stay healthy and he can, kind of show out a little bit, earn his way onto the 53, and be a contributor for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't be opposed to that at all. Avery Williams, the team's return specialist, didn't seem like he had the juice this year. I'm not sure if he just isn't fully recovered or what, but I don't think they're gonna prioritize him. Obviously, I don't think his move to running back is gonna help his case either because he doesn't really contribute at all in the run game. So yeah, I think Avery's probably on the way out. I mean, I wouldn't be
Yeah,
shocked if he's like they let him compete in camp again, but yeah, I think he's got a long road to the roster now.
this team needs a new returner,
Yeah.
a new punt returner. Obviously, you know, I don't know. Maybe they put Ray back there, but I don't know if Ray is gonna remain the team's primary slot receiver. It's still TBD with a lot of the. Hey, maybe you take a wide receiver so you can make Ray McLeod your returner.
That's
Um,
yeah. There you go.
that,
It makes so much sense
Alex
now.
brain move right there. Um, Yeah, it's Avery Williams didn't look good. So Avery Williams before the injury was statistically the best punt returner in the NFL when it comes to average return, like or punt return yardage average. The knee injury looks like it really zapped him. It zapped him of that explosiveness. It zapped him of some of that speed, which is what happens. But you know, I it was this when the season started. I think he hurt his knee in what July. So by the time the season started, it was already what 15 months later. Like
Yeah.
that's more than enough time for a knee injury to be fully healed. And I feel like at this point, given that he didn't really come close to getting back to where he was, I think this is just who he is now because he's had more than enough time to recover. And it's he didn't look great. He didn't look good. And
No.
it's the nature of the business.
And
And
Shaquavius Scott, yeah. No, no, no. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm more than okay with moving on from Avery Williams.
Yeah, Jaquavius Scott says, "Would you consider spending the seventh on a return specialist?" Yeah, I mean, I think they will for sure. If they don't spend an
It,
earlier pick on it, like, I mean, I don't think they're going to draft someone like I think the seventh absolutely, and they'll probably bring in a bunch of UDFA returners too, just to see. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all if one of those sevenths goes towards a return specialist. Um, so yeah, I think that's absolutely an option. Last one we'll touch on, I think. Rondale Moore didn't play a snap, but he's 25 years old, probably going to be like a vet min guy because he didn't play all year. I actually think they should bring Rondale Moore back. Like I think that is a guy they should bring back. And just see because they clearly had a plan for him. I think they were really disappointed that he got hurt. I don't think he's going to be like a major part of the offense, but I think he could be like your wide receiver 4. And maybe he could be that guy that competes for the return job too. So, I do think they will make a concerted effort to bring him back. I, I can't imagine he would be too opposed to coming back either. I don't think he's going to have like a long list of suitors. Like he's a guy that's I mean, to other teams, he's probably going to have to prove that he's healthy and all this stuff. So I think if the Falcons want him back, he'll probably just take the deal and be happy. But, what do you think? Do you think that they do try to bring him back or?
I mean, I think they'll want to see him again in camp. But with Rondale, you really need to see how he looks post injury. We just talked about Avery Williams. Like, is he going to be the same player, especially given the fact that he is a guy that has historically relied on his speed more than anything else. So, if he does look like the same Rondale Moore from Arizona, great. Yeah, sure. But if
Yeah.
he doesn't, like, I think you really want to see what he looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the silver lining, of course, is that he was injured in early August, so he'll have basically
Yeah,
an
a full
entire
year.
year to heal, and that's always good for that stuff. We still don't know exactly what it was. We only know that it was a knee injury. If it's probably an ACL tear, right? I mean, we don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean,
Um,
we can't like fully speculate. I mean, if we do speculate, it's given, a non-contact knee, you would guess ACL.
yeah. So given that timeline, he could
But
be ready for camp.
but
So yeah,
also, like, if it was just an ACL, it's one thing. But if it's,
yeah,
some of
yeah,
those mechanisms, sometimes it's something else. Like it can be multiple knee ligaments. Hopefully, that's not the case. It could be meniscus. So hopefully, it was, as clean and as minimal as possible.
yeah, yeah. So I think he is someone they actually will want to bring back, even though he didn't play for them. I don't. I think there's an incentive, obviously, for both sides. Like the Falcons probably want to see they had something in mind for him. They want to see it, and he probably would be wise to just take the Falcons deal if they do offer him one, because again, I think teams are going to be like reluctant to sign him to any like he's not going to be getting any kind of big deal. Like the Falcons offer him something that's probably the best he's going to get. So, yeah, I hope that they do bring him back. I mean, I'm interested to see if he can be healthy this year and what we if we can get anything out of him. And I'm sure he's anxious to get on the field too. So, yeah. Anyone else you want to touch on, Nan, that we didn't mention? I think we covered pretty much all the main names, but
Yeah, we covered everyone who's like sort of relevant.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously there's other guys, Damone Harris, Brandon Parker, Kevin King, but
Yeah.
we'll be here all night if we're.
Yeah, this is about 20 more guys. We'll extend this out another hour, but I think we covered all the ones that are like significant conversations. Um, and yeah, I think some of these guys obviously could be back, but I think the Falcons probably would have signed some of. I mean, the guys that they've already re-signed to futures contracts are guys that were practice squad players. I don't think any of these free agents are technically like eligible for that. So, we'll see who does end up coming back from this group. But I think there's definitely some guys that the Falcons could consider, and probably some guys they'll let walk. But given their cap constraints, the Falcons could kind of make an effort to just kind of not sign a lot of guys. Especially outside free agents. But to see if they could maybe qualify for some comp picks. But it probably depends a lot on how other teams view like Judon and Simmons and guys like that. If they actually give those guys, any kind of significant contracts. If the Falcons were to let Drew Dalman walk, they're probably going to be in line for a big comp pick for him. Considering he's probably going to get like top center money. But I don't think they're going to let Dalman walk, and I don't really think that Simmons or Judon are going to have huge markets. So probably not really. I don't really think there's going to be a lot of comp picks in play here. Maybe some minor ones at the end of the day, but any would be nice. But also remember, guys, like comp picks are for the next year. So we might know, like in a couple months, that the Falcons are probably going to get some comp picks, but they won't get them until 2026. So keep that in mind. There's not any additional picks coming this year unless you like make trades and stuff like that. But yeah, we had two questions come in that I wanted to get to real quick. Alex Foster with the $5. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you. Asks, it may have gotten lost in the Senior Bowl stuff, but what do you guys think of the Nate Ollie / Rutenberg hires? I like Nate Ollie a lot. I like that hire a lot more than I like the Jay Rogers hire. That's for sure. So I think Nate Ollie is a really good addition that hopefully will bear some fruit for this pass rush. He's worked on a lot of good defensive lines in the past. Rutenberg, I don't really know anything about, so he could be interesting. Don't really have much of a take on Rutenberg, but I do like Nate Ollie a lot. But yeah, you got any assistant coach takes, Adnan?
Oh yeah, I think everyone really liked um, the Nate Ollie hire. I think it was ever not many people really liked the bring back Olbrich, but then right after that, it was announced that they were signing or bringing in Ollie, and I think that got a lot of really strong, um, really strong and positive reactions. So yeah, that's a solid hire, and you know, good green
Yeah,
light. Thumbs up for that hire.
big thumbs up there. And then Corey Carter with the 5 with a draft question says, where do you see Ohio State edge rusher Jack Sawyer getting drafted at? I like trading back and getting him in the early 50s if he's there. I don't think he's going to make it to Atlanta's second round pick. There does seem to be quite a bit of like late first kind of buzz building for Jack Sawyer, given that he like finished so strong this year. I
I
I
keep
think
seeing him go to the
yeah,
Lions in a lot of
yeah,
mock.
he just seems like a Lions edge rusher like so much. But yeah, I think he's going to be a late first, early second guy. It wouldn't be crazy if he if he falls to Atlanta's second pick, but I do think he's probably going to go. He's probably like a guy that like maybe like if the Falcons trade back like in a big way to like the late 20s or something crazy, he could be on their radar. But I don't really think he's a guy that has a great chance of ending up in Atlanta because I think he's kind of going to go in that zone before they pick in the second round, and he's going to be a little too early for the first round pick. But I do like Jack Sawyer. I think he definitely made himself some money this year. Really showed I think that he's more than just like a, edge 2. Like he's still probably like he's not like an edge 3 that's like mainly a run defender, can give you a little bit of juice. I think he showed he's more of like an edge 2, which is why he's going to probably get drafted towards the end of the first round. But I think he's a good player. I like him as a prospect, but I think he's kind of limited athletically. I think you can see that. He's also just a dog. Like he's just tenacious as hell and tough as hell and team captain and all those intangibles that you love. So he's going to go earlier probably than his traits suggest, because teams know they don't have to worry about him busting. But I think the ceiling isn't really super high, which is probably why he's more of like that late first, early second type. But he screams Lions to me. So I think that's a good pairing. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Fun show, really kicking off sort of the off-season talk. We'll have a number of, obviously, several more shows about the salary cap situation, about some of the notable free agents, about Kirk. I'm going to have a show dedicated to Kirk Cousins. We're going to have a Kyle Pitts dedicated show. And, of course, we're going to be diving into the combine stuff when that comes out in a couple weeks. So we're full steam ahead into the offseason. Brandon Brasks with the $2 asks, Xavier Watts round 2 for us thoughts. Yeah, if he's there in the second round, absolutely load it up. Xavier Watts is great. I feel like he's going to end up creeping into that late first range, but safeties fall. So, maybe he does last. But I think that second round pick could be a sweet spot. There's a couple of safeties that are really interesting in that range. Malachi Starks has been kind of tumbling down the board too. So maybe I can dream about him falling into the second round. Probably not. But I like Xavier Watts. He's a good player. But yeah, Adnan, anything you want to plug before we start tonight, guys? He's at Say Which Way on the Twitters.
Yeah, I'll just plug the Falcoholic.com. Your one-stop shop. We're about to get started with free agents. Free agency is coming up in just a few weeks. It'll be here before you expect it, and that's where you'll find all the breaking news hits, all the analysis, and everything in between for the Falcons. And yeah, it's love free agent time. I love it because it really gets warm at that time of year, and the window's open. You maybe take a walk in the park or whatever, and check out what's going on with the Falcons and free agency, on the Falcoholic.com.
Yeah, we're just getting started here, folks. Definitely check that out. I'm Kevin, at Falcoholic. Kevin, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you got takes on these free agents, leave them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you want to support the show, you can do so by joining the Patreon. It's patreon.com/FalcoholicLive. Or if you're more of a video enjoyer, you can join up here on the channel memberships on YouTube. We're going to have even more live mock drafts for our supporters to get in on. Obviously, we'll have some mock drafts for the people as well. We're just getting started on the offseason, so make sure to check it out. Thanks again to BetOnline and Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's episode. We will see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live and 30 Birds and Brews podcast.